Hey there and welcome. My name is Marci and I am here to give you my 5-minute version of a recent talk that I gave at FNCE, which is the huge international conference for registered dietitians. The talk was much longer than that, so you're getting some of the juicy details but not the whole picture. So I was invited to speak on a topic. Our actual session topic was called Foodborne Dilemmas, where we were looking at kind of the issues of social media and what to do as registered dietitians, as well as what to do as individuals in interacting with the media in terms of how we consume it and also how we put it into the world. And my part of the presentation, which I loved because I got to dig into all of the nitty-gritty neuroscience, really revealed kind of the neurobiology of what we experience on a day-to-day basis. So I was invited to really look at social comparison theory. Social comparison theory has been a theory that has been around for over 50 years and has been researched and thoroughly tested. And essentially what we know is that as human beings, it is completely normal and common to socially compare with one another. In fact, we are social creatures from an evolutionary standpoint. So we have learned as a way to make sense of ourself and our experience and how we kind of fit into the world, that when it comes to subjective information, we compare against those around us. And what the research has taught us is that we tend to compare up more than we compare down. And when we compare up, meaning we compare against people or things that we believe to be the ideal, we feel worse about ourselves. No big shocker there. Whereas when we compare down, we feel better about ourselves. And this is connected to two different parts in the brain. Neurobiologists have been able to really look at the social comparison theory, which has a lot to do with our subjective experience, and look at where that is processing in the brain. And it's processing in the pleasure centers of the brain as well as the pain centers of the brain. So when we compare against someone else and we assess, I'm doing better than that person, that lights up the pleasure centers of the brain and then informs future decision making. And conversely, when we compare up and say, gosh, I really am not doing as well as this other person, it ignites the pain centers of the brain. And that causes us to be more envious as well as to lose our capacity for compassion, at least according to some of the studies. Now, what we know is that the greater the distance between ourselves and what we perceive to be an ideal for something that we've determined really matters to us, that creates something called cognitive dissonance. And we want to resolve that cognitive dissonance as quickly as possible. And this plays out in lots of different facets of our life. And of course, I'm interested in how this relates to our relationship to food and our relationship to body image and what this means in the context of our social media landscape. And one of the things that I learned in reading the research is that we have certain vulnerabilities or personality traits that make us more vulnerable to do more cross-comparing. So if you are someone who maybe has lower self-esteem or trends towards depression, or if you're someone like me, where you are someone who is really interdependent in relationships, meaning not that you are overly dependent, but you're someone who really likes to be in relationship and is curious about other people, or somebody who is highly sensitive, again, me, or identifies as someone who is highly empathetic. So you're someone who feels a lot, feels other people's emotions, can really identify with another person's experience, that you are likely going to be someone who is vulnerable towards more social comparing. So it's important to know yourself well and know, gosh, am I more vulnerable to these social comparisons? Because if you are, you're going to want to really assess, in particular, your social media landscape, because social media amplifies these neurobiological tendencies and increases the frequency with which we are more prone to make these social comparisons. So some of the research has taught us some interesting things. If you are someone who has a strong dieting or eating disorder history, it means you are actually going to be more vulnerable by social pressure to change what you're eating or how you're eating based on what you're seeing is happening outside of you. So that could be friends who are on a diet or friends who aren't eating, or something that's posted in Instagram, that is going to impact your eating habits and cause you to be kind of pulled around based on what's happening outside of you. So you're going to have a harder time eating in a balanced and consistent way. This is also similar to what happens in terms of body image. So researchers looked at Fitspiration and identified that Fitspiration images, particularly of female bodies, which tend to be hypersexualized images, images that focus on the backside or less inclined to have a woman's face, that these images really enhance cognitive dissonance. And the consequences of that is reduced body image, worse self-esteem, worse mental health, and more prone to disordered eating habits. So the take home for me is, one, be really careful about what you're seeing on your social media feed, and also makes a case for intuitive eating, being really tuned into your own internal cues, your own body trust, your own appetite, your hunger, fullness cues, as well as being connected to your own emotion, because that gives you the power to be mindful, to be self-compassionate, and to be intentional, and to really be empowered to make decisions that are in your best interest, rather than decisions that are informed by the ever-changing sea of peer pressure that surrounds us. So that's my 5-minute version of my FNCE talk. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you're a dietitian who's interested in catching the longer version, I'll be sure to keep you posted on when FNCE reveals the recorded versions of the talk. Hope you have a great day.